Whatever you don't want your children to do, I did it. So it was like starting a life in a completely different country. At that time, my English was still that bad that I had heart palpitations when I had to answer the phone. I am in charge of my life, and no one else can decide what I do. Now I start implementing, and I go like, why didn't I do this 10 years ago? I think nothing is new. There's always someone that's already gone through that and has walked that path. I remember thinking, if only I could make $50,000, then I'm rich and successful.
All right, welcome back to the Quest for Success podcast, and thanks so much for tuning in once again. Today, we are delighted to be joined by another one of Jam's Harvard friends, Melanie Summer. Melanie, thanks so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, and so I know you and Jam met at Harvard, but for me, never. This is the first time meeting you. Can you give us a quick high level overview who you are and what you do?
Sure. So I am German originally. I came to Australia because I sailed around the world with my first husband. We spent 3 years on a boat and spent some considerable time in Australia. And when we came back to Germany, which was in 96, it was a pretty negative environment after the reunification, and the economy wasn't great. So people were pretty negative. And then coming from 3 years on a boat, having no worries, that was a bit of a shock. And so we went like, okay, where in the world can we go? And Australia was the obvious choice for us. So we migrated to Australia at 97, had a daughter, divorced 2001. And then, yeah, my entrepreneurial journey started pretty late, really. I had sort of, um, I think I was 37 when I started my first real business, and that didn't go very well. I was almost went into liquidation with that company and had like $250,000 debt. And we sort of made the decision. I had a partner in it, and we made the decision to close it down. And but I was 37, single mom, had all my money put into that business, and went like, oh my God, if I now start with 37 as a single mom, that's not good. So I kept persevering. All my partners left the business, kept persevering, and I was able then with my team to turn it around. Won the National Telstra Business Awards in 2011, and then closed that business in 2015 because I could see changes in consumer behavior, and our business model wasn't great. So it was a good time. We had one of our best years, and I closed it then.
Mm.
And then I was looking for a passion project for a few years and couldn't really find a business model that I liked, and did a lot of soul digging and sort of asked myself, well, if I what am I really passionate about it? And I realized that what makes me really light up is making a business hum. And so coincidentally, we had in the family a business that wasn't humming at all and had been under management for years and years and years. So I took that over. It was a property management business, and that was probably the hardest 3 years of my life. But eventually, we sold it really well. And uh, in this whole journey, I also realized that I'm really not very good at startups. I like working with teams. That's where my strengths lies. So then I bought 3.5 years ago. I bought a registered training organization, Fortress Learning, and we train the trainers in vocational education. So
Wow,
that's a
that's
snapshot of my.
yeah, you've really summarized your whole life really quickly there. And that's fantastic. And we'll definitely dive into a lot of that story throughout this podcast. But I want to frame this whole conversation. I need to understand what actually is success. And so I want to start on that point. What does success mean to you?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Obviously, I've pondered about that in preparation for this call because I know that's what you're asking. And I think for me, success is a mindset because I couldn't dig down. So where I struggled is like there are days when in the morning I feel successful and in the afternoon I feel not successful at all. So I think it's a complex thing, but it's like nothing externally would have changed that day. But it's just how I see myself or how I compare myself or, how resilient I am that day. So I think, yeah, I think it's a mindset. And of course, we feel better when we're healthy. We feel better when we have good relationships. We feel better when we feel belonging where we are. And then when we go out and like things don't like we can still be successful, but I'm not sure we feel it that much. So I think, yeah, for me, success is a mindset. So my pledge after I had the conversation with my husband is like, how can I get my mindset so that I always feel successful, right? And not successful sometimes.
And what shapes the successful mindset? How do you make yourself successful if it's a mindset?
Good question. So I think I can tell you what actually destroys my mindset or my successful feeling is when I compare myself with others that have achieved uh, that I perceive to have achieved more. Not my obviously that can be anything like that could be triggered by someone having a bigger business or yeah a better business or better relationships or a nicer house. And I think that's where I really need to dig deep also and go like, yeah, that's I just need to own my own path and not get thrown off by other people.
So Mel, that's an interesting one, and both you and I studied at Harvard Business School, doing the same course, and we are studying with amazing bunch of group, right? You're just talking about comparing to other people. I know we're going through the same kind of experience, right? Is that make you feel like not successful, or like I mean, how do you
Yeah.
take it? Like, yeah.
So that was a really interesting experience too, because I came into Harvard and uh, definitely had a lot of imposter syndrome. But then I talked to people that had way bigger companies than me, and they have this imposter syndrome. And then there's people that are literally people that are billionaires, and they come in there, they have imposter syndrome. And I go like, well, this imposter syndrome is not related to how much money we have. It's again back to the mindset, right? It's like how secure do I feel in myself and how happy am I with my choices and how can I guard that and
Mm-hmm.
it not let other people or situations because they don't actively do that. It's like how can I not let that influence myself? Really,
Mm.
that's and
Yeah.
I've done when I'm in year three, right? I've definitely done a lot of work on that. But it still happens. Like it just happened the other day, and I was feeling good in the morning, and I was feeling successful and happy in myself, and then something small happened. Someone, and it completely crumbled, and got myself back up again. It's okay, but yeah,
Yeah, I
it's a
mean
journey.
we're all on our own different paths, right? And we those paths have led us to where we are today. And so it's you can definitely compare yourself to other people, but they're on a totally different trajectory.
Yeah, it's interesting discussion, right? Like even we are on a different levels, right? Our business could be smaller, medium, and then we're working with a few billionaires. And but the thing is, what I realized throughout the journey, especially going through some of the circles that we are doing, doesn't matter how big the business are, right? We all have very similar kind of problems. Like
Yeah,
every day, we get up. It's not like, hey, I have a massive business. I'm so good. I mean, it's not about the size. So everyone have uh, like a similar kind of problem in their own way. Either people or they're struggling with their. There's a struggle, right? Life is full of struggle, but I guess it's how you're saying it's mindset. It's more looking at those struggle and just realizing, hey, I'm doing okay. That's when you can probably get that mindset. Do you think that that's a good way to look at it?
yeah, absolutely. I also think a lot of where we are today is because of choices we made. like, it's not all, um, some of it is choice and some of it is luck. So, but I sometimes have definitely taken choices where, like, I've changed industry 3 or 4 times in my life. So that's always made me start again. But I wouldn't have liked to miss on all those learnings of different industries. And I still have, I have an amazing life. So I really can't. So I have to just remind myself that,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
And I want to understand the journey that's gotten you to where you are today. And I'd
Mm.
like to start right back at the beginning. I'd like to understand a little bit about your childhood, the environment that you grew up in, and how you think it's shaped who you've become.
Interesting. So my parents are still together. I think that's something that's not normal in today's society, right? So I had a pretty normal childhood. My dad went to work. My mum was at home. None of my parents were entrepreneurs. I had a bit of a complicated relationship with my mum, and that has definitely shaped me a lot, how I am with my children and how I am. So a lot of things that my mum did, I'm not doing. So I'm the opposite from her. But then she also did some really amazing things. She was very caring, but um, she also had a couple of things that. So for example, um, she would draw back when she was angry, and not discuss it, right? And I'm the opposite now. Like, I cannot literally let go of, if some relationship is not clean, I find it really hard not to bring it up and get it clean. So with my daughter, with my husband, friends, even staff, I need to get it out. And that's so the the opposite to my mum. But I think it's helped me because, I hardly ever go to bed with a grunge, or I don't
Mhm.
sit on things. And it's definitely brought me rich relationships. My dad, on the other hand, is Mr. Positive. Like, he's always, my mum always is like, she always sees the negative. My dad always sees the positive, and I think I got that from him. Got a super positive mindset, at least most of the time. And so, yeah, I'm really grateful for my learnings from him. Um, yeah, I think that's shaped me as who I am today and how I try to see the world.
And then so growing up, what did you want to do? Like, how did you go from this small girl in Germany, if I'm not wrong, and then to eventually coming to Australia?
I don't think, and if I have regrets, then that's probably, I have never really been intentional until late in my 30s. I've just gone with what happened. I wasn't super intentional at school. I was more into partying, and I was definitely more, yeah, what happened happened. So I never knew really what I wanted to do for a long time. I went into studying property. That's where I met my first husband, but even that was more accidental than I'm. That's what I want to do. I actually didn't. So we have property in the vocational education in Germany. So it was a diploma, um, and I missed out to go to uni, not because I wasn't good enough, but because we had deadlines and the application was sitting on my table, and I just didn't get the letter to the post office. So I wasn't I wasn't anything what I am nowadays. I was lazy. I was like, I liked party more than work. I wasn't driven. And all of that just happened, I think, in my 30s. So yeah, my first, and even sailing around the world, that wasn't my dream. That was my first husband's dream. And I just met him, and he says, "This is what I want to do." And I was 21, and I went like, "Yeah, let's do it, of course." So I was all accidental and non-intentional, whereas my mid 30s, all that changed all of a sudden.
So you kind of went with the flow those
Yeah,
days, pretty much, yeah. So
yeah.
I read, I think on LinkedIn, you left home like 16.
Yes, so I was naughty. I was not a good daughter. Like I kept I have a daughter. I was a single mom with my daughter, and I was always dreading the teenage years because I thought if my daughter is only half as bad as I was, I have my hands full. And luckily, she turned out to be the like dream child. She was nothing like me. But yeah, I was really challenging for my parents. I don't want to put that on a podcast what I've done, but whatever you don't want your children to do, I did it. I would stay out with, hang out with the wrong crowd, get into the wrong things, and yeah. So my parents gave me an ultimatum and literally said, "With 16, we don't want you in our house anymore, and you can move out." And so I got it. I was still at school. I got myself through the um well, we had year 13, but equivalent to year 12. Got myself through, but just was so lazy, didn't do any work, didn't go to school every day either. So yeah, it was a handful. Yeah, and then I'm just thinking that I had a couple of years really lost, and then as I said, by pure coincidence, got into this diploma of property, and that's where I met my husband. And then we traveled for years and went to Australia and then had a child. So, all of that was still just sort of unintentional, just happening.
Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to jump on quickly and say a massive thank you for all of the support so far. But I also wanted to ask a favor of you guys. We want this podcast to reach as many people as possible so that we can share all of the incredible learnings that we've had so far. But in order for us to do that, we need to grow our following to beat the algorithms. But the good news is, however, there is one simple thing that you can do to help us reach that goal. So I ask you if you could please follow or subscribe to us on whatever channel you're listening to this on. It'll help us grow the channel, which means we can get on bigger and better guests for you guys. And with that, back to the episode. And you spoke about sailing around the world. I imagine there must be a lot to unpack here. Why did you guys do it? And tell us a little bit about that journey and where you ended up.
Yeah, so my husband was 11 years older than me. So I was 21. We weren't married at that time. I was 21 and he was 32, and he had been quite successful in real estate. So he was at the point where he thought about retiring, and he had just the year before I met him bought himself a little boat, and he really enjoyed it. And he had a couple of storms that he went through, and he said, "Oh, this is something that challenges me. I would like to do." And then he bought a bigger boat and sort of went. We had just started dating, and he said, "Oh, would you come with me?" And his original plan was just to cross the Atlantic. So we prepared for crossing the Atlantic, and then in the Caribbean, you meet people that are traveling around the world, and that it becomes a little bit more normal and not so abstract and surreal. And so he asked me one afternoon, he said, "Oh, what do you think about keep going rather than our original plan was over the Atlantic through the Caribbean and then back via Bermuda Triangle and back to Europe?" And yeah, I was 21, right? Yeah, of course, let's do it.
Yeah.
And he said, "But we can't turn back." And that didn't worry me. So, and then we just kept going. So we went through the Panama Canal, the Marquesas Islands, then the French Polynesia, Samoa, Fiji, New Caledonia, and then to Brisbane.
Wow. And is like looking back on that, do you
Mm.
really appreciate that you took that opportunity and went and traveled at that time?
I definitely appreciate that it did. It's like it's something that no one can take away from me anymore. The memories are amazing, and I feel I have traveled. I don't have that in me anymore that lots of people go, "Oh, I really need to travel." I don't have that. I like travel, but it's not like I'm as happy. I live on the Sunshine Coast, and I think it's the top spot in the world, to be honest. So I don't have anything pulling me away. What I probably in hindsight, well, I always knew that it wasn't my dream, and I probably didn't enjoy it or appreciated at the time as the people that worked really hard for it. Like, so we had a couple of people that were young, and they had, that was their dream, and they worked for it like for 5 or 6 or 7 years, saving money, building a boat or buying an old boat and renovating it, and they poured everything into this adventure. And that really, I think, makes a difference,
Hmm.
as if you have something handed to you, which really, let's be honest, I had it handed to me. My partner said, that's what I want to do, are you in or are you out? I didn't do anything for it. And quite honestly, I always felt a little bit, I was giving up my opportunities at home and starting my career and stuff. So yeah, but yeah, I can't. I mean, what an amazing opportunity, right? I wouldn't even do it now, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, it's a once in a lifetime, and I'm sure not many people can say they've done that. And while
Mm.
you were out there, did it make you realize what you actually wanted? Because I remember you mentioned that you were a little bit lost, and so I imagine 3 years sailing, you must have had a lot of time to reflect on what you wanted.
No, no. I wish I would could have this deep answer and make myself look good, but I don't. I honestly got my brain when I was maybe late 30s, where I thought about life. And I think I was exposed to personal development by a property course that I did on the Sunshine Coast. It was called Wildly Wealthy Women by Dimna Bohold and Sandy, can't remember her surname. Anyway, and that was the first time. And I went, oh, there's this personal development stuff in there. Um, I'm just signing up for the property stuff. And yeah, it was exactly the opposite. I don't think I'd ever did anything with the property stuff, but it was my beginning to actually asking myself, who am I? What do I want? Started goal setting, started working on myself, on my mindset. And yeah, that's when my intentional life began. I think I was 30, 35, 36.
Wow. And so you come back from this big long trip, sailing around the world, and then what happens next?
So while we were away, the business partner of my husband had literally dismantled his business. And so we came back in a bit of a panic of rescuing what there was to rescue. And it wasn't pretty. So he lost, it was his money at that time. So we weren't even married. So he lost most of his assets. And so we had to start again. And that's when the sort of the question was, well, we have to start here or do we go somewhere else? And so then we applied for a permanent residence in Australia and got it really quickly. I think within 4 months they called us and says, yep, congratulations, send in your passports. And we said, oh well, if we go to the other side of the world, then let's get married. And the lady at the embassy said, well, if you want to get married, can you do that before you send in your passports? Because otherwise we have to redo the visa. So we literally got married within 7 days and then got a new passport, sent the passport in. And I think that was, we got married in May and we flew to Australia in August and bought a house and then went back and then came here for good in October, November 97.
And what was it about Australia that drew you here?
Yeah, so the one thing you think when we traveled and we had a lot of beautiful places like, beaches and like gorgeous, gorgeous landscape. But what we realized is there's a beach and then there's another beach and there's another beach. And then after a while, you get really sick of beaches. Like they're just all the same. And it's not what really made the times was when you spend it with people you loved. So finding a space or a place where we had people that we could interact really well with was important to us. So that sort of excluded places like Canada or not Canada, sorry, Panama or
Yeah.
Hong Kong or the Asian countries because we felt we would always be an expat in those areas and we had
Mhm.
seen the expat communities. And to be honest, a lot of expatting communities, there's a lot of drinking going on and they're in their small communities and it's not really integrated in the countries. That's how we felt anyway. And so we went like, we really want to stay in our culture. And I think Germany, Canada, and Australia have a very similar culture. The States I find very different, and then um, yeah, all the little islands or other countries, South America, they again pretty different than our culture. So, and Australia just had the best weather, and we loved it here. So we loved the country, and we loved being able to live on the ocean and
And
yeah.
the place that you are living now is probably one of the greatest place in Australia, like one of the best beaches and beautiful people. So you
Beautiful
can't.
weather. Yeah.
I agree. It's sort of it's not too hot. It's not, doesn't get too cold. We have beautiful beaches, beautiful landscape, but we're still close to Brisbane because
Yep.
I lived in Early Beach for 3 or 4 years after my divorce. And while I loved it, but A, was too hot in summer, and B, we were so far away from everything. Like it was just like here it's an hour and a half drive, and I'm in Brisbane, and I've got stuff when I need it, and I can get away from it and be live my solitude life here, which is not solitude. You still have stuff here on the Sunshine Coast, but it's not as overpopulated as other big cities.
Definitely. And so when you came to Australia, what were you working on? What filled your time?
We were in property, so we did a couple of property investments at the time, and just built a couple of homes, spec homes, and um, yeah, that was it for us for the first couple of years. We
So you were
didn't
just
work.
flipping homes just
Mm,
privately? Yeah, right. Okay.
yeah,
And
yeah,
then what happened?
and then we got divorced, and so then I had a 1-year-old daughter, and I had never worked anywhere in Australia.
Oh,
We had a partnership in Alley Beach in an ultra hookah business, and I had sort of done their books. And so we sold the business when we divorced, but we sold it with my husband said, yeah, we sell it, but you have to keep my wife on as the bookkeeper. So I moved up to Alley Beach and did the books for this now sold ultra hookah business, and then met another lady, and she had, at that time there was no Zero, it was all QuickBooks and MYOB, and she loved MYOB and I loved QuickBooks, and she had QuickBooks clients that she didn't want. So then she said you can have them. So then I started taking over her QuickBooks time, and then I did a bookkeeping business up in Early Beach, and I think at the very end I had 5 girls working for me, but I don't look at that as my first entrepreneurial company, because it was, I don't know, it's more like I needed help. I needed more hands to get the clients done, but it wasn't, it was still nothing like what we do now in business.
But you must have learnt a lot from that experience.
Well, I think in those, I learned that I'm self-reliant, that I can actually work hard and get myself through life, because it was yeah, it was pretty daunting to be a single mom. I had no family, I had no friends, no family in Australia. I had no friends up in Early Beach. The couple of friends that I had in Brisbane weren't long-term friends, so I don't think I've got contact with any of them. So it was like starting a life in a completely different country. At that time, my English was still that bad that I had heart palpitations when I had to answer the phone.
Wow.
So, because I was not feeling comfortable enough to understand what people actually wanted from me, or being able to explain and say, just hang on for a minute, I have to ask. So, yeah, that was all. Yeah, it was pretty. I remember I was on the phone to my mum a lot in tears. And yeah,
Must have been a
it was
tough period. I mean,
it was a
it would
tough
be
period.
hard enough to be in a country with a support network, let alone basically having to restart your entire life with a young daughter as
With the
well.
baby, yeah,
Yeah.
with the bababy. And then everyone that has babies know when they start going into daycare, then they get sick all the time. So then I got sick all the time. And yeah, it was a tough period, but also really important, because I started. I think that's when I started growing up, really.
mm,
And
yeah. So I guess those difficult moments make you really stronger and think probably outside the box because it's all
Yeah.
about survival, right?
Yes. Yes. It was on survival. It was definitely survival at that time.
Yeah. So Mel, you,
I
yeah,
remember thinking, if only I could make $50,000, then I'm rich and successful. There you go.
Wow. That
That
fully,
changes.
yeah.
If only I could make 50, that would be the big goal.
when was this?
That would
90,
have been around early
2000,
2000s, yeah.
early 2000. Okay.
Mm,
So a lot has changed in what, 24 years.
a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you started this bookkeeping business, and then was your plan to continue to scale that, or were you looking for other opportunities?
Dylan, at that time, there was no intention, anything. I was just doing my work every day. There was no looking in the future and what, and even having those five girls work for me at the end. I don't think it was very long towards the end, but I remember having subcontracting to five. And it wasn't, they weren't staff, they were just subcontracting when I had too much work on. But no, there was not much thinking about, but like Ellie Beach, how many people live there? I don't know, but I probably, I think I was probably one of the biggest bookkeepers there already. And we're not talking about, like, I think we're not talking about lots of money. I think I took I charged $30 an hour, and that was the highest rate there was in that time.
And so I read that you ventured into a photography business.
Yes, so I came 2004. My daughter was four, and I sort of realized that Early Beach probably didn't have a lot of opportunity. And I thought, and her father was down here. Not that he saw her much. He was pretty much out of her life. But I thought that would be worth coming down where there's a little bit more opportunity. And so in 2004, I moved to the Sunshine Coast. And first thing I started was working for a town planner and was their financial controller in a part-time position. And then so it was my ex-husband who had just started this photography business. And I went to him and I said, "Oh, do you want to do something in business together?" And he said, "Oh, I just started this business. Why don't you join us?" And so we started this photography business. It was his girlfriend who was working for a photography business on the Gold Coast, and we started something like that. Then here we had we actually started Gold Coast and Sunshine Coast as well, and didn't go very well.
Right. And what, when you say it didn't go very well, what ended up happening?
Well, we weren't profitable for a start. We couldn't get it profitable. We had we had three owners, then his girlfriend went out, then he had a new girlfriend and she came in. And just from that, there was no alignment in the leadership team. But at that time, I wasn't even thinking about leadership team or like, it was just like I go to work and do my job, but there was no planning. I don't know. I actually don't even know what I was thinking. But we weren't profitable. And as I said, after 2 years, we sort of wanted to close it down. And I think I've already told that story that I couldn't. And I then just kept it going and
And so,
then became profitable.
and how did you do that? How did you, as I guess a solopreneur at that point, how did you turn around a failing business?
Yeah. So I think, and I think what I learned at that time is it's not necessarily about me, it's about my team. So what I was good at was getting that team together and go like, okay, I was really honest with them. And I said, well, we're losing money. I don't know if we can keep it, but let's brainstorm this together. What can we do to actually make it work? And this is a nice story too. So and it got better. We actually got better, but we still went over the worst. Um, and then so I was it was a pretty tough time financially and mindset wise. And then I met someone and he said, I've just done hypnotherapy. And I go, like, hypnotherapy, what's that? And he says, yeah, it's helping your subconscious to when you have problems, sometimes it's like you have a bucket and your bucket is full and you just can't any learning, you just can't move forward because your bucket is full. And hypnotherapy is like you empty the bucket and you start from scratch, and then the learnings you can actually implement
Reset.
them. So yeah, like a reset. And I went like, oh, I think that's what I need. So what so I went and saw a hypnotherapist, and what she discovered was that I had, when my first husband left the business, he had put money in just 3 or 4 months before, and he said, well, like $25,000 or something. He said, well, you have all the shares, you keep going it. If it dies, it dies. But if you make it successful, you pay me that money back, that $25,000. And subconsciously, I didn't want to do that because he
Hmm.
had left. He wasn't, he was just going out. I didn't think he deserved it. So in that hypnotherapy session, we reframed it and we went like, how quick can I pay him his money back and make this business successful? And I told you we had $250,000 in debt. And within 9 months, I had paid back that whole $250,000 and the $25,000 to him.
Nice.
Wow.
So the change when it came was really quick.
And what actually was the change?
So the change was that we started, instead of just operating in a local business, we actually then went out into regional Australia. And we had thought about that before, but never had the courage to do it. And the staff went like, that won't work. Anyway, once that there was one staff member, she said, I think it can work. And then we planned it together and we literally went, I think our first trip was to Woomba and Rockhampton or something like that. So we sent marketers out, we booked temporary a studio. We bought a van, we bought like a temporary studio that we could set up, and yeah, we went into those towns and we just killed it.
Nice. That's when you got that Telstra Small Business Award, right? For
Yeah. So that was probably 2009 when we had that idea and started turning everything around. And then by 2011, we got the awards for that.
awesome. That's not easy to do that. So you must be doing something
We did
different.
something right then for
Yeah,
sure. Yes. Yeah. We had product market fit, would you say
that's
nowadays,
it.
right?
And then I want to know how you got into training.
Well, as I said, again, this was probably more me than looking for a business that I could buy. And I I'm pretty systematic and I like process. And so training, when you have a registered training organization, the hardest thing is the compliance and the government regulations. And that didn't worry me because I thought I could manage that really well. It was a business in our budget. It was online. I don't want to move away, and this is where I talk about choices, right? I don't want to live in Brisbane, Sydney, or Melbourne or anywhere overseas. I want to live on the Sunshine Coast, and this business was I could run it online. So our business is now completely online. I've got staff in LA, Singapore, Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, everywhere, sort of. Yeah, and so I just ticked a couple of boxes that I liked, and we bought it.
You had any background in training, Mel, before?
No, no, I literally, as I was saying, like that was my fourth industry, and I've learned from scratch.
And
I'm
is
still
there a
learning.
reason? Is there a reason that you wanted to buy a business? Because I'm just thinking, for most people, that's not a very traditional thing to do.
Yeah, I think that was the realization that I'm really not very good at startups. Uh, I I I never have good ideas, and if I have an idea, I'm not sure I back them. So that's where it starts. And then I did a startup once, and I just got so overwhelmed with the things to do in different areas. Like because I seem sometimes, I feel like I have no language because my mother tongue German, I'm not very good anymore. Like I still speak it, but when you want me to write
Hmm.
high level text, I suck. But my English is not great either. Like I can have a conversation, but if you want me to write something, that's not my strengths, right? Thank God for ChatGPT because now I have to write something. I just write it how I want it and then put it in
Yeah.
ChatGPT and say, please add it for clarity and spelling and and take my Germanism out of it.
You're not the only one, Mel. Yeah.
I'm really bad at design. Like that's just so bad. I can tell you if it's a good design or a bad design, but I can't even do the simplest thing. My things look awful. Um, so I think when you sort of start up, right, unless like you want to do all those things them yourself and you need to produce a lot of stuff to kick things off before you have staff. And I'm just not good at that. So yeah, I work really well with the team, and I think that's what I did in my photography business, getting the team around and motivating them and having them to buy into my vision and get them excited and get them like I'm not a very hands-on manager. I'm pretty let go, but so I'm not a micromanager, is what I want to say.
Hmm.
Uh, but it still works because you give people the autonomy to create and they feel valued when you do that and they feel I just support my staff. That's what I'm good at, I think, supporting them and setting the vision and course correcting. And that's where my strength is. So you can't do that with a startup because you don't have a team.
Hmm. Hmm.
And you've been in quite a few different businesses, and I I want to know, at what point do you know that it's right for you to leave and to move on to the next one? Like when did you decide, okay, is it I've done enough here and I want to find a new challenge, or what was it for you?
Yeah. So well, the bookkeeping business was easy because I wanted to leave the area, and um, the photography business was because I could just see the writing on the wall. So at that time, actually a year after I closed, a lot of the other big companies, and there weren't that many. There was Maya had a photography studio. They closed down. Starshots was another big company, and a lot of the Starshots businesses have failed. So there was just something in me that I knew it wasn't right anymore, and I went like, I'm let's get out of it now, and while everything's going well. And I don't know why, but I just knew, and in hindsight it was the best decision I made. And the property management business was a little bit different. That was my husband. I hadn't really achieved the goals that I wanted to achieve in the business, but he said, we have these conversations at Christmas, when we actually have time to sit down and we think about our lives now and we do our goal planning. And he was, what year was that? 2019 was the conversation. He says, I've never seen you work so long hours and never seen you so stressed because in property management, you're always the wedge in between tenants and owners.
Hmm.
Like if you do a good job for an owner,
Bad
tenants
for
won't.
the tenants.
You
Yeah.
do a good job for tenants, like the owner's your client, right? But then also owners are never happy. They just see, oh, your tenant damaged something or you didn't pick something up. So it was never achievable to actually have happy owners all the time.
Hmm.
Most of the time they were not interested, but they were always there when something went wrong. And there was hardly any ever, and I thrive on that. Like my thing is create super fans in a business. Like that's what ticks my box. Like when I have customers that sing our praise, I know we've done a good job. And I was constantly putting out fires, and it was an ungrateful business in a way. And that took its toll on me. And I didn't actually see it, but my husband saw it in me. So he went like, let's just sell it. And yeah, we found someone buying it in January after Christmas, and we actually said, let's settle on the 1st of March. But I was 1st of March, I was at London Business School with EO at a course. And I said, let's settle on the 1st of April. And yeah, I came back on the 8th of March from London. And on the 15th of March, COVID hit with
Oh, wow.
the, so of course we didn't settle. We ended up settling 6 months later, 10 months later in October, or 6 months later, yeah.
Yeah. So Mel, interesting discussion. So when you're young, you mentioned that you're quite lazy, didn't have any direction, and knowing you for last 2 years, I've seen you working really, really hard, and you're really focused, very prepared when you go into classes. And to me, I seen you as a very hardworking, very focused person. So that's the whole change to when you're young, right?
Mhm.
And then we were talking about the success is about mindset. So do you think throughout this journey, doing multiple business, etc., have you if that different diverse experience help you to change that mindset to be more focused, more driven?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's so much there to unpack. Not only like I've done a lot of personal development, I also did a diploma in hypnotherapy after I had this.
Wow.
this I worked as a hypnotherapist for 6 months maybe. Um, so yeah, I really learned that your mind is everything. And I mean, even look at people in the hardest situations, right? It's the difference between happiness and not being happy and being grateful in life. Like, there's how else could you look at people that had a really hard life and they've lost limbs or they are in wheelchairs and now they have this successful life because they have impact and they're not just feeling sorry for themselves, right? And be victim of their life. So I think that's that was a massive learning for me, that I am in charge of my life and no one else can decide what I do. And so what I want to achieve, I work for really hard for. And to be honest, you say I work hard, I don't, because I actually love what I do. So I don't even feel I'm working hard. I work long hours, but it's not hard. It's fun most of the time. Most of the time. There are days that it seems hard, but that's yeah, again, that's probably when you didn't have a good sleep, or when you didn't have that candid conversation that you should have had, or when just things aren't as aligned as you wanted it to be. And usually it's either your mindset to external things that happen to you and you become a bit of a victim, or you made some wrong choices, or yeah, or you just not.
What are the techniques that we're talking about, more psychological side, right? Like you have a negative mindset. I mean, we all go through that roller coaster journey. How do you switch back to that positivity?
I think there's two tools that come into mind that are just so important. One is reframing. So no matter what happens, you can reframe it in a positive way. And that's my go-to thing all the time. Something bad happens and I go like, well, what's the good in it? And how can I reframe that? And even just trying to reframe it, even if it doesn't instantly gives you a better state and a better, like you feel better, you already know that you have control because it's your mind. You're not just sitting there and you're a victim. You're taking control and you create rather than being a victim of circumstances. By reframing it, you take charge. So that's my go-to one, and I have to sometimes hold back. I do that with my daughter a lot. Like, she comes to me with something negative and I instantly try to reframe it for her, and that's not really good sometimes because people don't feel heard, right? They feel they're not yeah, so I'm working on that I'm not reframing for others. I just reframe for myself. Um, and the other thing is gratitude.
Hmm.
So when things, I lost my dog last year, and I never thought that you can even grieve as much as I'm getting teary now. I did never thought you can grieve for an animal like that. And so every time I feel upset, I just become so deeply grateful for having experienced a connection with a dog.
It's
It
mean
sounds so
mean a
weird.
lot, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
it's more than a dog.
So reframing and gratitude are the two main tools I use.
Mm. That's excellent.
And uh, you've been to Harvard. You said you were at the in London for EO. It sounds like you do a lot of continuous learning um, outside of your work. Are there any other key lessons that you've taken from these additional education that you implement into your day to day?
Uh, I'm hard on myself and I keep saying that I don't implement enough what I learn, but I actually, I always have a course or two or three on the go, always, on top of Harvard and on top of things. So I, and I think it's the sheer volume that I probably can't implement everything. But when I'm honest with myself, there's little things that I do all the time. They're just not like, I think sometimes the little things you don't realize them. And I think, Dylan, when we had this conversation the other day about what was our Harvard learnings in the last year, and I find it really hard to quantify it and say this, but I say it's like a spider web. Like, you have those connections and the knowledge, and then you do another course and they get a bit stronger, and then they get a little bit stronger. And you don't realize because it's slowly progressing. And then you look back 5 years and you go like, man, I've learned so much in the last 5 years. But you can't probably say these are the 20 things I learned.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and I think it's just like you're adding tools to your toolbox, but then they're just sitting there until the time is right, and then they become useful.
That's so true. And sometimes you have to hear them 3 or 4 times before they even register with you. So I've got that too, that I read a book or I learn something and I go like, man, a good thing is I started following EOS or Entrepreneurial Operating System and put that in my business. I'm sure I've heard about that for the last 10 years. And I read a book, the Traction book, 10 years ago, and I thought it was amazing. Have never done anything with it. Now I start implementing it and I go like, why didn't I do this 10 years ago? But I literally, and in the last 6 months, I probably came across it 4 or 5 times, and it was like the universe came there with a pole hitting me over the head, going like, hello, hello, Mel. We've already told you about this. So sometimes it's just the repetition of, and then when you're ready, don't they say that when the student is ready, the teacher will appear?
I think that's such a fantastic little quote. And I think it's so true because there's so many times in life where people will give you pieces of advice, but you might not be at the right stage for them to make sense to you. But then looking
Yeah.
back, you're like, wow, why didn't I see that? It was so obvious.
I heard a nice one the other day, and it's training without action is entertainment.
Yeah.
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 But I like entertainment, so
And Mel, it seems like you've done a lot across your journey, and sometimes a lot of it has just been kind of your own accord. Has there been any mentors that you've had along the way who have helped kind of guide you?
yeah, so I've worked. I have always have a coach that I work with. Like most of the time, there's someone. I'm in a coaching program somewhere. Um, I learn lots from my husband. He's my guru. Um, and so yeah, lots of learnings from there. Definitely lots of learning from my dad. Um, how to deal with people, how to manage people. I think that whole team, working with a team, that comes from him. And he's always like, we talk most days. So there's lots what I learned from him. And then, yes, and then obviously my RPM buddies, there's lots of people that I learn from and that I really look up to, and that there's so much to learn. And the last thing is probably I've been a member of EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, for the last 9 years. And so you're in a forum with other entrepreneurs and meet once a month. And that journey has been amazing. So there's always, yeah, lots of mentors and learning. Maybe not formal mentors as much, but yeah, definitely lots of people that I can reach out to. And if I have a question, there's always someone to help me, or someone, because we have to learn all this stuff, but the, everything, nothing is new. There's always someone that's already gone through that and has walked that path that you can ask, and that can share their experience so that you don't have to make those mistakes again. And it'd be so nice when you get born, you get a funnel and you get all that knowledge implemented that
Yep.
already exists, right? Unfortunately, we're not there yet.
But do you think that's part of life? Is that
Yeah,
journey of accumulating all that knowledge?
of
And if you
course.
started with all of it, then maybe there would be kind of no
No
point.
fun.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Of course, that's right. That's part of the journey, isn't it? The learning and the failure as well. If everything would just be rosy, it would be exactly like those beaches, one beach after the other. It just gets boring. So
Yeah.
you
That's
have
it.
to have the variety of have a bit of hardship and challenges to actually really enjoy the nice times.
Yeah, that's interesting because sometimes you look back and thinking, those tough times are the most interesting times in your life.
I definitely don't want to do them again. I've
Yes, but the learnings and that
but the learnings,
experience.
and I think the confidence that, whatever happens, like when you're at the deepest point, there's only one direction. You can only get up. So there's nothing that you can't overcome as a human being.
And your
But
desperation also help you to pick things up.
yeah, if you haven't been smart enough before to change things, then the real desperation will actually motivate you to do something.
And you also mentioned gratitude before as well. And
Mm.
so, do you think those hard times, now looking back, you your baseline has changed, and so you have more gratitude for what you have now, considering where you've been?
Yes and no. So at the time, like 10, 15 years ago, no one was ever talking about gratitude. That I think that's only a concept that happened, oh, maybe in the last 10 years,
Yeah.
like in mass, right? But I think gratitude is so much more powerful. I don't think you can have gratitude for really little things in life, like, oh my God, I woke up this morning and actually I'm healthy.
Mm.
And and maybe you have to have see that someone else in your, like, it's happened recently that a friend of ours, 51, had a heart attack and didn't come home, right? And then all of a sudden, waking up in the morning with, I'm not 54, um, it's pretty special.
Yeah.
And
It's the small things.
so it's the small things that
Definitely.
that really make that gratitude work.
So Mel, I know you're doing great with your new venture, like the business that you're doing now with Fortress. And what's next for you? What's the plan?
Yeah, it's good questions. I still don't know really. So we're still working on uh, making Fortress the business that we want it to be. So I think we're still in the middle of hard work and pivoting a little bit, and getting through a couple of things that we're not happy in the business. Not what we do. I think our operations are great, but there's still some learnings that I need to do in the business. Like I'm not a very good marketer and sales person, so that's where my growth comes at the moment. Um, and yeah, I always said when I bought Fortress that this will be my forever business, and I could imagine it will be, but I have. the feeling that I have still another business in me, and most likely Wild Fortress is there, but so I have no plans or anything to sell it. But who knows? That's yeah. At the moment, it's a forever business, but I'm sure there's another business still in me.
Yeah, for sure. And looking back on this incredible journey that we've been talking about, do you feel successful?
Most of the time, I do. And as I said, like there are definitely days where I feel successful one at one time, and then there's next hour something hits me, and I go like, "What a failure am I?" Um, but maybe that's part of that whole journey, right? In general, I'm incredibly grateful because I have really good health. I value my health, and I'm in pretty good shape. I have incredible relationships in my life. And I definitely have the financial freedom to do in my life what I want to do. So I think they're three really big um, areas in my life that work really well. So yes, I do feel successful.
That's amazing. And I like to wrap up these conversations to, like, while we've been talking, I've been trying to pinpoint some of the ingredients which I think have built your successful life. And so I'd like to share some of them with you. I think the first one for me was you are a very introspective and deep thinker, and you try and learn from the past as well. You were, mentioning things about your mum that you're trying to change with your daughter, and you have clearly done a lot of self-reflection and are trying to become the best version of yourself. And I think that's, trying to be 1% better every day. I think that is an incredible skill and something that we are seeing a lot of across a lot of successful people. And then the second one is agility, being able to go with the flow. There was times there where doors may have opened, which you didn't know were doors, but you just had the courage to kind of go all in. Sail around the world, sure, let's go. Go to Australia, sure, let's go. And I think taking those opportunities has is what has led you to where you are today. And it's taking opportunities is really kind of what sets entrepreneurs apart from the rest of us. And so I think that's one of your core skills. And the other one is grit. I think you have clearly been through quite a lot of hardships throughout your journey. And I can't even imagine being a single mother in a brand new country, barely being able to speak the language, and then still achieving what you have today. So I think having that grit to stay and fight and get to what you want and kind of prove yourself. And then the last one, which we've heard so many times, is you're a continuous learner, having so many things on the go at once, always trying to take lessons from everywhere that you can. And even if they're not immediately obvious what you'll use them for, as you said, they're all part of the spider web, and you'll eventually get there one day. And so it's I think they're the core factors which have led to your successful life. But I really appreciate this conversation. I've definitely taken a lot away from it.
Well, thank you, Dylan. That was a really interesting summary, and yeah, I think you nailed some really key factors there. That's
Yeah.
really interesting. Thank you. Thank you for
So,
doing this.
Mel, thank you so much for spending your afternoon, morning with us, and also sharing your story. Because I know not many people wanted to unpack the story and share that with the wider audience. That's all fine, but yeah, it because the whole purpose of this discussion, we just want to, if we share these stories and if we can encourage someone else. I mean, everyone's going through different journeys, like different experience throughout their life. So if we can influence them, if we can encourage them, not everything is rosy, right? As we know. So that's the intention of our podcast, our discussion. So thanks for being part of it.
No, thank you. Changing one life at a time, right? I love that.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's
Yeah,
it. And
amazing work, both of you. I love your project.
thanks, Mel. And if people want to follow your journey, is there anywhere that they can find you?
Probably LinkedIn is my best thing. Melanie Summer. Yeah, that's probably the best one.
Perfect. And we'll definitely reconnect over in Boston later in the year, and who knows, maybe even get a little hypnotherapy session from you.
Yeah.
You watch out. You might already have had one.
Oh no! Oh no! Thank you so much. And for those listening, if you could follow and subscribe to us on whichever channel, platform you're listening to this on, and head over to our website, thequestforsuccesspodcast.com, to see all our episodes, and also join the discussion and complete our success survey so that we can hear what success means to you. And on that note, we will see you guys in the next episode. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.